Before I get started, I'd like to thank all of the paying members of my Patreon channel. Your support is necessary, and without you, none of this is possible. And I also like to give a shout out to Sean for his support of the channel. And a special shout out to Daddy Dame for the $20 donation.
My man.
And the $50 donation. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, Cash App and PayPal are available. Just be sure to let me know in the For section if it's okay for me to thank you publicly, or else I'll assume you'll want to remain anonymous.
And here we go.
Layman's Journal Chapter 250. So I'm sure all of you watched the Super Bowl, particularly the halftime show and the controversy surrounding it. Kendrick Lamar ruffled a lot of feathers with his performance, but even months prior, people were upset with him being the choice, even though he had already performed in the 2022 show, which was the first of its kind to win a Grammy for Best Live Performance. And prior to that, there was his iconic showing at the Grammys back in 2016. So his resume is outstanding. He is the standard the NFL looks for when choosing a halftime performer. But even still, there were detractors, people who were predetermined to hate the show, and it wasn't exclusive to the left or the right. The criticism came from both sides of the political spectrum. On the left, you had the Young Money fans. Because the game took place in New Orleans, people wanted Lil Wayne, who grew up as a local talent. And then there are the Drake fans.
Just mid! It was mid! It was mid! It was nothing spectacular! Kendrick fans were just glazing him!
It's okay. It's okay.
Drake's had enough!
Shout out to the Shirley's channel. But yeah, they took it personal. They didn't like the way Kendrick drug their idol through the mud.
Why you trolling like a bitch? Ain't you tired? Trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor.
No.
And then there are the boomservatives and race warriors, the communities that always find new ways to complain about what they don't like. And Serena Williams' crip walking didn't help either. Many felt it was in poor taste, given the fact that her sister was deleted by a member of the Crips. But still, the show was a huge success, drawing 133.5 million viewers, the most in Super Bowl halftime history. As for me, I chose to stay out of the debate because I'm a huge Kendrick Lamar fan. Just listen to the loop I'm playing now in the background and the way my videos open with every episode. It's pretty obvious. So I enjoyed the show. I just didn't think it was a hill worth dying on and remained silent. However, I see the same energy when people talk about the Captain America Brave New World film, because it, like the halftime show, is clouded in discussions about race and DEI, and few of the traditional critics, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, have given an honest assessment. People are bashing or defending it out of tribalism. But after seeing the film for myself, I've got some things to say about it. And yes, this will be a spoiler-filled review. And with that said, we're gonna talk about it. So, let's get it. Now, I'm not blind to the fact that talking about the MCU is big business. In fact, you could argue that it's more lucrative than the movies themselves, as there are dozens of content creators all over social media that have made millions of dollars individually trashing Disney for the work that they do. And it's gotten to the point that people are more interested in videos that criticize the MCU than the movies themselves. And it's reached its saturation mark. Beginning with Captain Marvel, the MCU has pushed a DEI-inspired woke agenda in their projects. But now the tide is turned. They've lost billions, as many fans have abandoned the brand. And for full disclosure, I'm one of them. I gave up on the MCU 5 years ago. And if it wasn't for my YouTube channel, I wouldn't watch anything that they do. But like I said, it's good for business. But getting back to the video, the criticism keeps coming. And people, in my opinion, have been too hyperbolic, and it's gotten to the point where they're just saying stuff out of shock value. There was one particular content creator who said Captain America Brave New World is worse than the Marvels.
Exactly. are you talking about?
And that's a bridge too far. As for me, I can't say that it's a good film either. It's just not awful. I don't think it's down there with the Marvels, Eternals, Quantumania, or Thor Love and Thunder. To me, it's middle of the pack. It's a C-level film, which is saying a lot, as most MCU films are C to C+ in quality. None of them are classic cinema. They're summer blockbusters, popcorn munchers. You don't go to an MCU movie for mental stimulation. You don't watch for the acting, directing, screenwriting, or plot. However, Captain America: Brave New World and the MCU as a whole is somewhat entertaining. As I like to say, the MCU is the McDonald's of filmmaking. So the flaws that I found in Brave New World are not limited to the film itself, but rather the entire MCU as a whole. These are structural problems, systemic problems that are much bigger than Brave New World. Problems that have existed in phases 1 through 3, not just 4 and 5. And honestly, I believe the film might have been better had it not been weighed down by those systemic issues. For example, the way the studio decided to market the movie by letting the whole world know in the previews, yes, Red Hulk is in the film, and it's President Ross. Because the film set that up to be a plot twist, something that was supposed to shock and surprise the audience. All movie long, we knew something was wrong with President Ross, but we didn't know what. We just knew he wasn't well, and that he was taking strange pills for his ailment. But we didn't know what they were for, and as the movie progressed, we got clues. But it's in the final scene that it all plays out. But because it was shown in the trailers, the reveal was anticlimactic, because we all knew it was coming. So the build-up was pointless, frustrating really. Imagine watching Fight Club for the first time and knowing Edward Norton and Brad Pitt are both Tyler Durden, or knowing that Kevin Spacey's character is Kaiser Soze before watching The Usual Suspects. I'm sorry for the spoilers, but both of those films are 30 years old, and by this point, either you want to see it or you don't. But getting back to the video.
But Layman, if you read the comics, you'd know.
Hell! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Seriously, every time with these people, bringing up points nobody cares about. Please, for the love of God, shut up about the comics. We're talking about the film. And if your film depends on something that happened outside of the script, then you're telling a story. In other words, the comics don't matter. But moving on with the flaws I found in the film, my second gripe is that it uses the same old tropes. You know, those annoying MCU-isms that are in every damn project, making each movie indistinguishable from the previous. Trope number 1, petite girls beating up grown men. This chick right here, actress Shira Haas, she's about 5 feet tall, 85 to 90 pounds. Yet here she is, smashing a chair over a man's head. And now she's overpowering 2 men in hand-to-hand combat. And next, we see her picking up a grown man, a man twice her size, and slamming him down on the floor.
That's stupid! Use your common sense!
Then there's trope number 2, the annoying sidekick who serves as comedy relief. And that's the Joaquin Torres character. All he does is prattle and do goofy stuff for the audience. And of course, they're the corny one-liners, the stupid one-liners.
Captain America, I dreamt of killing was bigger than you.
I'm happy to disappoint.
People don't do that in a real fight. Now that's supposed to be a bad guy. He's a terrorist who takes human lives. So not only is Sam fighting for his own survival, but he's fighting to stop a terrorist plot. But because the film makes it seem like they're about to play a game of one-on-one basketball, they trivialize the moment. And I hate how the MCU always does this in their films. It makes their movies feel like Saturday morning cartoons or lighthearted video games, like the heroes and villains are having fun. And they do it in every damn movie they make. And it was stupid and lame the first time they did it. Now it's just annoying. Violence, in my opinion, should always have consequences and high stakes. And then there's the obligatory cameos. Just random characters popping up for 5-minute conversations, who serve no purpose other than to get a cheap wow from the crowd. And as far as this cameo goes, it's really weak, because Sam and Bucky have already done an entire series together. Seeing them have a conversation serves nothing. And the conversation they had was so irrelevant, so pointless, you could have taken it out and the movie would have continued being mediocre. And then there's Sam not having any superpowers.
Why?
No super soldier serum, which is something synonymous with being Captain America. Now, I have no problem with him being a normal human as the Falcon, but when you're playing Captain America, you need to have the juice, because the role calls for him to do things that no human can withstand. Now, they try to rationalize it by giving him a vibranium suit made in Wakanda, and they also give him the Ant-Man's helmet. But being able to withstand multiple blows from the Red Hulk isn't how physics work. None of those things should be able to save him. That's movie magic, plot armor, and most of all, bad writing. If you want Sam to be a normal human, then give him enemies and tasks that a normal human can survive. Don't have he and his sidekick flying at hypersonic speeds with just goggles and bodysuits for protection. The sheer force of moving at that rate would rip the suits and flesh from their bodies. And don't have him taking repeated blows from the Hulk and survive just because he has vibranium wings. The same vibranium wings that the Hulk tears as if they're pieces of paper. Again, that's just bad, lazy writing. But all of these issues are beyond the movie. These are things that happen in every MCU film, and in this particular case, they were written into the character prior to the project, so the director had to embrace those rules, whether they wanted to or not. So again, my criticisms against the film aren't against the film itself, but the MCU as a whole. Regardless of what movie they make, regardless of whom they hire to write or direct, they have to suffer the bad jokes and dumb writing and miniature girls beating up 200-pound men because the studio says so. The bottom line is, and I've been saying this since Phase 3, the MCU needs to grow up. The first film of the franchise, Iron Man, came out in 2008, 17 years ago. The 12-year-old boys that begged their parents to take them to see that movie are almost 30 now. They've grown up. Yet Marvel continues to produce content for 12-year-old boys. And that's a problem because this generation of young people aren't into the MCU. Generation Z, Alpha, and young millennials are into anime and manga. They care more about Demon Slayer, Solo Leveling, and Eren Yeager than they do Captain America, Red Hulk, and the Fantastic Four. For example, I have a 13-year-old nephew who doesn't give a rip about the MCU. And why should he? It's corny. It's dated heroes with dated stories and contrived plots. They need to modernize the material.
Stop. What do you mean by that?
And by modernize, I do not mean DEI. I mean they need to evolve it with fresh true life stories that have real consequences. For example, take Isaiah Bradley, who was also a major character in the film and the show. He's a very interesting character. I would have made a movie about him. Now, for those who don't know, he was the real heir to Captain America. He's a black man who took the super soldier serum and picked up the shield after Steve Rogers disappeared for the first time. And he was a war hero. He fought in Korea, and shortly after winning the war, when he came home, he was imprisoned and experimented on. And it reminds me of another film, of a breakdown I did of a movie last month called Dead Presidents, which you can watch now without obstruction or commercial interruption on Patreon. But that film was about a black man who came home to nothing after fighting in the Vietnam War, how he experienced a country that had nothing for contempt for what he did. And I think the MCU doing a version of that story featuring Isaiah Bradley would be phenomenal. But then again, that is a sophisticated movie with great acting that dealt with adult themes, and the MCU has never been in the business of making intelligent movies. And that's my take on the film. And as for the individuals that are mocking it and calling it DEI, referring to him as Captain African American, that frustrates me because black alone doesn't mean something is woke, especially when you're talking about black men, because we don't benefit from woke or DEI culture. And to further explain what I mean by that, I want to share an excerpt from Dr. Tiesan Johnson as he was giving his thoughts on the film.
where you treat it just like the comics. And the problem with the comics over the years is, if you really treat it to form, you wouldn't have a whole lot of people of color in that joint. And this is something that Black comic book readers have been fighting over for generations. And this is one of the things I talked about in one of my early reviews on my blog of Black Panther. You had generations of Black men in particular who were fighting, just like you had Black women fighting for Barbie to evolve and include Black Barbie dolls. Well, you had Black men fighting for Black maleness in comics. They made independent books. They made books that fought its way into the mainstream. You had artists and writers, from McDuffie all the way to Milestone and many more pushing into mainstream comics to really force that in. And that, of course, was supplemented by real life Black male accomplishments, from our participation in military wars to the boxing ring to baseball, football, basketball. Black men proved that they deserved their place. They deserved to be on the battlefield. The problem with DEI is it threw everybody in the field, and then it created a hierarchy that dismissed Black men. And so a lot of the white cats that are upset about DEI and they want to eliminate all of it have thrown Black men into the DEI bucket. But we were never in it. And this is the frustration. This is on a larger scale, this is the problem between the right and the left, politically. The left has kind of bought into the notion that heterosexual maleness is inherently problematic and exploitive. So Black men are thrown into that bucket as far as the left is concerned, which is why when they constructed affirmative action and DEI, it largely didn't include us. The right, especially during this, what they were calling this red wave, this response, with the election of Trump and the pushback against DEI culture, they see it as important, to get rid of people like Sam and Black men in comics and whatnot as a push to get rid of DEI. But the problem is neither camp has embraced Black men in any significant way. So one side is trying to get rid of you because of the DEI pushback. The other side tried to get rid of you because you're a heterosexual male. So they look at Black Captain America and they say, well, this is DEI, we got to get rid of it. And that's what a lot of the hatred online is about, before people even saw the movie. And it was like, no, Black men are actually not in the DEI camp, not because, we couldn't be, because when you really look at the language of that or affirmative action, Black men should have been the first people addressed, but we weren't. And so we're not really largely accepted in either camp, which is why they don't really know what to do with us. And Captain America is falling right in the middle of that conflict. These cats have been looking for a reason to hate this movie since they first heard it was coming out.
Now, Dr. Tia-san enjoyed the film more than I did, but his thoughts on DEI are dead on. Just like Kendrick Lamar, people decided they were going to hate this film before having seen it, simply because a Black man was taking on the role of Captain America, and they carried their bias into their reviews. And my conjecture is, while the film isn't great, it isn't the monster that some content creators make it out to be. Again, it has flaws, but those flaws apply to the MCU as a whole. The entire franchise is bad. And by the way, if you want to know my understanding of woke and DEI, please check out this video. It's some of my best work. And I'm going to let those be my final thoughts on the issue. But before I go, I recently did a breakdown of the film In the Bedroom that's streaming exclusively on Patreon. Here's a preview. Laymans Journal Chapter 247. My grandmother was a single mother. Actually, both of my grandmothers were single mothers. But focusing on my maternal grandma, her firstborn child, my aunt, was not my grandfather's daughter. Now, we don't know much about my aunt's father, only that he wasn't around when my aunt was born. And that was common back in the day. Men who sired children and refused to stay at home to help raise them were viewed as the scum of the earth and would often leave town to avoid shame. But it didn't take long for her to meet and marry my grandfather. You see, Black men back in the day had no issue becoming stepdads, and that was a tradition that carried on through the boomer and X generations. But this younger generation of men, millennials, zennials, and Gen Zs, are no longer accepting that role for multiple reasons. I repeat, multiple reasons. And one of the main reasons why men of all races are no longer willing to be stepdads is because of the biological father. My grandfather was willing to be my aunt's stepdad because he didn't have to contend with her father, and that was beneficial to my granddad for several reasons. One, It allowed him to be an authoritarian in her life, meaning he didn't have to seek her father's permission in order to be her parent. But most importantly, he didn't have to worry about her dad coming back around, trying to get his family back. He was completely out of the picture, which allowed my grandparents to build a life together. But that tradition is gone now. Not only is the out-of-wedlock birth rate higher in the Black community than it was back then, but the social stigma of refusing to help raise a child doesn't exist today as it did back then. Back in the day, a man couldn't show his face if he wasn't there for his kid. Now that dude can walk around without judgment. But more importantly, he still has access to his baby mama, which oftentimes makes things difficult for the new man in her life. Now, I want to be careful discussing this issue, because I'm not arguing that a man shouldn't be in his child's life, or that a woman should have sole custodial rights, allowing her to alienate the child from the father. What I am saying is, being a stepdad in today's age means having to deal with the child's father. And that's problematic because most single mothers, not all, but a great majority of them are chronic bad decision makers. They choose the worst men, dangerous men to be the father of their children. And as a man seeking a relationship with a single mother, you don't often know what you're getting into. And while I have never seriously pursued a relationship with a single mother, I have many friends and family members who have. And I can tell you plenty of stories about the bad experiences they've had. And it doesn't matter what type of woman you're dealing with. Single mothers of all socioeconomic backgrounds can have crazy baby daddies. But my point is, craziness isn't exclusive to or exempt from a particular social class, and the film In the Bedroom is a prime example of that. It's the story of a young man, a college student, who gets involved with an older single mother of two. That results in fatal consequences. Again, that's patreon.com/Laymans Journal. And that's it. That's all I have to say about it. What do you have to say about it? Leave a comment in the comment section and let's have a conversation.
How am I spending my Friday? Some jerk chicken with rice seasoned, red beans and some bread. Got some red wine over here. And I'm watching Layman's Journal on YouTube. Shout out to the brother Layman. Check him out. I'll leave the link in the description. It's your boy Calvin King. And this is how I'm enjoying my Friday.